G'day Learn2Code students, welcome to our second Hopscotch challenge. Today we are going to make a game that I call Copter. You might call it something else depending on the theme that you go for. But in this session, we're going to create a game that's similar to Frogger, or as many of you students tell me once I explain what Frogger is, a game called Crossy Road. So let's have a look at Crossy Road and see what we're going to do. So here's our Crossy Road game. The aim of the game is to get this chicken across the road and obviously avoid getting hit by cars and by other things while you're going across the road, like I just managed to then. You'll notice in the game, as you play it a few more times, that it becomes more difficult the further you get and things change a little bit. I'm not very good at playing games, but you get the gist of it. We're trying to get a character across the road and we're trying to avoid any objects that are coming at us while we cross the road. Okay, so this is a version of our game called Copter, and this is what we're going to be building today. And our main sprite is a helicopter that we move with these up and down arrows, and we're trying to get our helicopter to the star. And we need to avoid the objects that are flying through the sky. So we need to avoid the aeroplane, the lightning bolt, and as we get further in, there's more objects to avoid. As you see, if I get hit by one of those objects, my score goes to 0. Every time I get hit the star, my score goes up. So it's not exactly like Crossy Road or Frogger. It's a similar version. We can't move left to right. We can't move horizontally in this game at the moment. Also, there's no background. So these are things that you might want to add to your game once you've completed this version. However, the main focus to begin with is trying to just get our character moving up and down the screen. So we're going to have a think about that, and then we're going to have a shot at doing that. But before we have our think about the game, remember this is the first time that many of you are making a game in Hopscotch, so you really need to have a shot at the challenge before looking at the walkthrough and all the hints. However, this is actually a pretty hard game to make, so it's really great that you're having a shot at this challenge. Don't get too disappointed if you're finding it difficult. It's meant to be difficult, and what we will be doing is giving you plenty of support after you've had a shot at this challenge. So before we start, let's just have a think. What event blocks in Hopscotch do you think will control your main sprite? So that's what we really need to think about. That's the first thing we need to do. The most important thing is getting that helicopter on, or that main sprite, whichever you choose that character to be, that sprite to be, and to make it possible to move that character so the player can move the character around the screen. Just starting to record on the iPad here, and as you'll see, I've started a new project and chose the blank project. Now, I'm going to choose a sprite from my emoji. So I choose the text, I click down on my emojis button, and I'm actually going to choose the frog sprite. So I'm going to make the more traditional version. Now, as I move my frog around the screen, you'll notice that the numbers change. We're not going to get into that too much, but basically 0, 0 is down here. If we move upwards, our second number changes and it goes up to about 750, and that's called the y-axis. So we need those numbers to be able to program our character how we want it to move. If we move across the screen horizontally, that's called the x-axis, and it goes up to about 1,000. So 0 is down in this corner, 750 is around up here somewhere, and 1,000's over here. So you sort of need to remember those, just so you can roughly move your sprite around. So I want to put my sprite roughly in the middle of the screen, which is 500, but down towards the bottom. Now, first thing I want to do is make my sprite a little bit bigger because I find that the emojis are a little bit tiny, so I like to increase them by 200%. Now, that's up to you whether you want to do that or not. As I increase my emoji, I always want to make sure that it works. So I press play and test out if the program and the code that I'm doing actually works. Now, the next emoji that I'm going to put in is actually our controllers. So over on the keys down here, I'm going to choose the up, and we're going to program our sprite to move upwards. Now, again, up to you whether you do it or not. I always like making sure that, especially with the buttons, that they're big enough for my fingers to tap, and so I don't get confused. So I'll test that out. Looks pretty good to me. I think I'll be able to tap that. And if I add in another button, it's going to be the down one. And I'm going to program it to do the exact same thing. And later on down the track, we're going to show you a quicker way to program things to go like this, slightly quicker. But today we're just going to do those manually so you get used to doing them. So let's test it out again. And our buttons, I actually think those buttons are a little bit close, so I'm going to move them there, test it out again. And I'm happy enough with that for the moment. So I might just move that a little bit across. So now it's actually time to program the frog. So if we think about it, we're going to add a new rule in and the when block. So we want an event that happens to make the frog move up the screen. What is that event that happens? If you ever think about it, it's when we touch or tap that up arrow. So if you look at these different when blocks, you can go through them and think about them. And the one that we want is when something is tapped, then we want these instructions to happen. So as I said before, it's when the up arrow is tapped, we want whatever instructions appear down here to happen. And if you can remember, we spoke about the y-axis, and that's the up and down, that's the vertical axis. So I'm going to change y by a certain number. And from experience, I think 80 is a good number to make that. So let's test it out. So what should happen is when I tap this up arrow, our frog moves. Okay, so it's working. Now, if I go back into my editing screen, I need to make the frog move down when the Y arrow is tapped. So I'm going to say when the down arrow is tapped, I want the frog to move down, which is on the Y axis again. And I'm going to make the number 80, but I don't want it to move forward 80. I want it to move backwards 80. So I use the negative sign and it actually goes backwards 80. So let's test that out. So if I move up and down. Now, if I get all the way up to here, nothing much is happening yet. So I need to add in another character or another sprite to our game, and that's something to collect. For me, I'm going to make that, I know there's some plants, so I'm going to make that a plant that our frog is going to collect, drag that up to the top of the screen. You could make that grow, or you can leave it the same, it's up to you. I'm going to leave it the same today. Now, I want for you to note roughly where our frog starts off, and it's around the 500 mark, and it's around 500 for X and around 50 for Y. So somewhere about there I'm happy with. So I'm going to go into my frog and say that when it bumps that plant, because this is going to make it go back to the start of the screen, back to the bottom of the screen, this program, when, I'm going to say frog bumps plant, I want it to go to this specific position. And as we moved around, we saw that our X was around the 500 mark and our Y was around the 50 mark. So let's test this out. Should be able to move up. If I hit the plant, I move back to the bottom of the screen. Okay, so that's exactly what I want. So I want my frog to collect the plant. Now, that's all I'm going to be showing you today. The next part that you're going to do on your own is choosing a character that's going to be a character that you might dodge. And for me, I'm choosing the alligator or the crocodile. And that crocodile is going to move across the screen. And if the frog ends up hitting the crocodile, the frog goes back to the start. Then what I also want you to think about is when the frog hits the plant, I want the score to change. So it's going to keep track of the score. And also, if the frog is hit by the alligator, then obviously the score gets wiped and it goes back to the start. So you've had a look at, and now you know some secrets to how we can make a character move like the frog. So if we go back into these, we can see these programs and we can make the character move up with the Y axis changing. If I want a character to move across the screen, I'm going to need to change the X axis. I'm also going to just give you one other hint, and that is when the play button is tapped, that's what we're going to have control the characters we dodge, because we don't want to control them. We don't want an event that makes us as the player have to be involved in that. This is an automatic event. So as soon as that play button happens, we want our crocodile to do these things. So as I said before, this is a tough challenge. It'll be great even if you can just get your frog moving around the screen and maybe get your alligator or your crocodile moving around the screen. After you think about that, you need to think, when my alligator hits my frog, I need things to go back to 0 and back to the start. So it'll also be a great idea to think about how you might make the score change in your game. We'll also be putting up on the website on the Friday afternoon solutions or possible solutions, because there's usually many options that can solve these challenges on our website, on the blog, on the same spot that you've been able to find this video. So if you want to try to solve it on the weekend, have a look at our clues and the solutions video on the Friday afternoon, and you might be able to end up finishing off the challenge with a little bit of help from that if you can't do it by yourself. And then on Sunday afternoon, we'll actually be putting up the videos for next week's challenges that we'll be working on in session 2 if you want to get a bit of a head start on those. But remember, you don't have to. I'm Jack Lewicki. Thank you for listening. This is a Learn to Code second video challenge. And I hope to see you all this week during our sessions. So see if you can solve the challenge before our sessions start. But remember that we will be helping you through the challenges once our sessions do start. So you don't have to actually complete them before our sessions start. So I'll see you during the week.